I've been joined by Martha Suarez, the president of the Dynamic Spectrum Alliance. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
This is the first time that you've been here, the first time that Dynamic Spectrum Alliance has attended. Some people might find it strange that someone dealing with spectrum is here at a fibre conference.
Yeah, that might sound like that, but indeed we are working at the DSA promoting different types of dynamic spectrum access, and in particular we are advocating for better Wi-Fi. So it really makes sense to come here and present the two technologies and how they complement each other. So we are working on fiber, there are many deployments, we are getting more and more capacity to the households, to the enterprises, but we need to combine that capacity with powerful and performant Wi-Fi. So that is basically my message for all the participants, and I think it really makes sense to consider the customer, how they're going to connect, and many of them will do it through Wi-Fi networks.
So do you think that, well, in any walk of life, but maybe here at this conference, and maybe sometimes Wi-Fi is a little bit taken for granted?
Absolutely. We have been interacting with many stakeholders, and it's like we are using Wi-Fi all the time at house, at companies, public libraries, public hotspots, and we are so used to it that we imagine that it's there, it has been always there, and it will be always there. And indeed, we hope so, but we need to take into account the new needs and the new generations and make sure that Wi-Fi has enough spectrum access so it can really deliver the capacity, the throughputs that are expected, that are very well combined with fiber. So for example, the new Digital Decade Path is proposing that by 2030 in Europe, every household will have 1 gigabit per second. So imagine you have fiber to the home, that's great. But if your Wi-Fi is not delivering that capacity because it doesn't have enough spectrum, then you're going to find a bottleneck. And users will be just not receiving what they would like to see, the multimedia capacity, video, etc.
Okay, that's really interesting. So what's new in the world of Wi-Fi? What new technologies should we be thinking about?
Well, Wi-Fi has been evolving, and now we have the most recent generation is Wi-Fi 6E. And it's the 6th generation that can operate in the 6 gigahertz band. It provides throughputs of the order of gigabits per second, so we can expect up to 9.6 gigabits per second. And if you take into account the bandwidth, so it provides larger channels. So it's like a highway. If you have larger lanes, then you will have more traffic. And Wi-Fi 6E is bringing the capabilities of channels of 160 megahertz. And that's why we also need an additional band, because we don't necessarily have that capacity in the existing bands. And we are also working on the next generation, Wi-Fi 7, that is expected by 2024. And there we will have channels of 320 megahertz of bandwidth. So we are going to see dozens of gigabits per second. So that's really a lot of capacity and very good performance with very low latency.
Okay, that sounds very exciting. I'm sure there's lots of important use cases for that. I mean, particularly it might be important for startups and SMEs who can't always access other ways of getting that kind of connectivity.
Absolutely. There will be so many new use cases. We are entering in a world of augmented virtual reality, and all those devices will connect to smartphone or to the router or among them, and they will need a lot of capacity. So that is very important for those use cases. For many enterprise use cases, SMEs, they don't necessarily will have the capacity to afford 5G private networks. So many SMEs, startups, they rely on Wi-Fi for their connectivity, and they deserve to have the best capabilities. So Wi-Fi 7, Wi-Fi 6E are going to provide that capacity. So yeah, we also see in Europe a lot of activities. For example, there is an alliance for XR/VR, and that's very exciting because then we will have a lot of applications in Europe.
Great, that's exciting stuff. You mentioned a little bit earlier 6 gigahertz. Europe has opened up a portion of that part of the spectrum. Should they be doing more?
Absolutely. So Europe made the decision to open 480 megahertz in the 6 gigahertz band for licensed XM access. So technologies like Wi-Fi, but others, and also others. But that's not enough. So we think that Europe should make available the entire 6 gigahertz band, So instead of just 480 megahertz, it would be 1200 megahertz. And that would put Europe at the same level of other advanced economies, like some administrations that made that decision were, for example, United States, Canada, Korea, Brazil, Saudi Arabia. So many of them are recognized leaders in 5G, but they complement their 5G networks with a powerful Wi-Fi. So Europe made a decision for a portion of the band. We think that it's a very good first step, but if the decision is not making for the entire band, there is a risk of lagging behind those economies and affecting the growth of so many different industries in the continent.
Okay, well, thank you for helping to explain that to us, and I hope through this conference you're able to get that message across to the rest of the delegates. But for now, thank you very much for taking the time to come and talk to us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, and it's really great to be part of this conference. I have really enjoyed all the sessions. I see there are so many amazing developments, so it's really exciting, and I'm very glad to be here.